The massive doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep rumble that echoed through the vast hall. Representatives from across the known galaxy sat in their designated sections, their various forms creating a bizarre tapestry of life. Some floated in liquid-filled tanks, others perched on crystalline platforms, and a few existed as pure energy contained within metal shells. High Admiral Kalen stood at the center podium, his 6 arms trembling slightly as he held the datapad, containing information that would change everything. The Vorthak had served as military commanders for over 2,000 years, and never in their recorded history had they been forced to deliver news this devastating. Fellow beings of the Galactic Alliance, Kalen began, his voice automatically translated into hundreds of languages and communication methods. I stand before you today to confirm what our scientists have calculated for the past several months. The Devourer threat has reached a critical point. A heavy silence fell over the chamber. The Devourers had been a constant threat for 3 centuries, but everyone had hoped that their combined technologies and resources would eventually find a solution. They had thrown everything they possessed at these mysterious machines. Weapons that could crack planets, shields that could withstand supernovas, and the greatest minds from every known civilization. Our mathematical models all point to the same conclusion, Kalen continued, his voice growing heavier with each word. At their current rate of consumption and reproduction, the Devourers will strip every habitable system in this galaxy within 57 standard years. The chamber erupted in a chaos of sounds, harmonic wails from the ethereals, clicking patterns from the insectoid Krathen, and electronic bleeps from the synthetic Valorians. Fear was universal, regardless of species or form of communication. Counselor, Vexhai of the ancient Nebular Confederation rose from her gaseous containment unit. Her species had survived the birth and death of stars, witnessing the rise and fall of countless civilizations. If anyone had perspective on galactic threats, it was the Nebulans. We have attempted every strategy known to our collective civilizations, she announced, her voice like wind through distant caves. Our most powerful battle fleets have been consumed. Our evacuation efforts cannot match their expansion rate. Even our attempts to communicate with them have failed completely. Dr. Zenth, the cybernetic representative from the Synthark Collective, projected holographic displays showing their recent battles. The images were horrifying. Massive black ships the size of moons, systematically dismantling entire solar systems. They moved with purpose and intelligence but showed no interest in communication or negotiation. Each encounter follows the same pattern, Dr. Zenth explained, his mechanical voice devoid of emotion but somehow conveying the gravity of their situation. The Devourers arrive at a star system, deploy smaller units to strip mine all available matter, and use those resources to construct more of their kind. They show no interest in preserving life or responding to our attempts at contact. In the back section reserved for newer council members, a small delegation from the Terran Republic sat quietly. Humans had only achieved faster-than-light travel 40 years earlier, making them relative newcomers to galactic civilization. Most species considered them barely above primitive, still learning to walk among the stars. Ambassador Hyunwoo Park listened carefully as species after species confirmed the same hopeless conclusion. The Krathen military commanders reported that their insect-based battle tactics had proven useless. The ethereal energy weapons had no effect on Devourer hulls. Even the ancient Valorians, who had perfected warfare over millions of years, admitted complete defeat. We must face the reality, announced Prime Counselor Thys, the elected leader of their democratic alliance. No known technology or strategy can stop this threat. Our only option is to prepare our populations for the inevitable end. Some delegates began discussing evacuation to other galaxies, but the mathematics were impossible. They had neither the ships nor the time to move billions of beings across the vast emptiness between galaxies. Others suggested hiding in deep space or underground bunkers, but the Devourers had proven capable of finding and consuming even the most hidden settlements. As the council session continued, the weight of extinction pressed down on every being present. 300 years of warfare had ended in complete defeat. The greatest minds from hundreds of civilizations had found no solution to a threat that seemed to violate the very laws of physics with its efficiency and relentless expansion. Then, as the formal declarations of defeat continued around the chamber, Ambassador Hyunwoo slowly rose from his seat. The movement was subtle, but in the context of such a solemn moment, it drew attention. Conversations gradually quieted as delegates noticed the human standing calmly in the back section. "Honored delegates," Hyunwoo said, his voice carrying clearly through the translation systems despite speaking at normal volume. "I have listened to your reports and calculations, but I must ask a simple question that seems to have been overlooked." The chamber fell completely silent. A representative from a species that had barely mastered space travel was about to address the combined wisdom of galactic civilization at their darkest hour. Dr. So-Young Kim pressed her face closer to the observation window of the research vessel Persistence as they drifted through what remained of the Kepler 442 system. Where 3 planets had once orbited a yellow star, now only debris fields and strange geometric patterns of processed materials floated in the void. "Pass me those analysis readings again, Jin-Ho," she called to her research partner, who was hunched over a quantum scanner in the corner of their cramped laboratory. Dr. Jin-Ho Lee looked up from his equipment, pushing his hair out of his eyes. They had been working for 18 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. "The molecular breakdown is unlike anything we expected. Look at these sorting patterns." So-Young moved away from the window and joined Jin-Ho at his workstation. The holographic display showed the atomic structure of materials the Devourers had processed. While every other research team in the galaxy focused on studying Devourer weapons and hull composition, the human team had taken a completely different approach. "They are not just destroying everything randomly," So-Young said, her excitement growing as she traced the patterns with her finger. "See how they separate the carbon compounds from the metals? And look at how they arrange the processed materials in these neat piles." Jin-Ho nodded, his own understanding dawning. "It reminds me of something. Remember when we were kids and watched construction crews prepare building sites back on Earth? They would clear everything away, but they would sort the materials into different categories." From the bridge, Captain Min-seo Choi's voice came through the communication system. "Dr. Kim, we are detecting Devourer activity in the next system. Over. Fleet Command wants us to maintain a safe distance of at least 2 light years." So-Young grabbed the communication device. "Captain, we need to get closer, not farther away. I think we have discovered something important about these machines." "Are you crazy?" Captain Min-seo's voice showed her concern. "Every ship that gets too close to active Devourers gets consumed. We have direct orders to avoid contact." "But that is exactly the problem," So-Young insisted. "Everyone has been trying to fight them or run from them. Nobody has tried to understand what they are actually doing." Jin-Ho pulled up more data on his display, showing recordings from dozens of Devourer encounters over the past century. "So-Young is right, Captain. Look at these attack patterns. They are not behaving like military forces trying to conquer territory. They move more like workers following a job schedule." So-Young studied the movement patterns Jin-Ho had isolated. The Devourers always approached star systems from the same direction. They processed materials in the same order. Asteroids first, then moons, then planets, and finally they would begin harvesting the star itself. But they never hurried, and they never deviated from their systematic approach. "This is not random destruction," she whispered, the pieces of a massive puzzle beginning to form in her mind. "This is organized construction preparation. They are following some kind of work protocol." Dr. Taewon Nam, their communications specialist, looked up from his console where he had been monitoring Devourer transmissions. "I have been analyzing their internal communications for months. The signals are definitely structured like data exchanges, not military commands. They seem to be sharing progress reports and resource allocation updates." So-Young felt her heart racing as the implications became clear. What if everyone has been wrong about the Devourers from the very beginning? What if they are not invaders at all? Jin-Ho was already pulling up historical records of the Devourers' first appearance 3 centuries ago. Look at the initial contact reports. The first Devourer ships appeared in the Outer Rim territories. in systems that were mostly uninhabited. They ignored the few colonies that were there and focused on processing raw materials. That makes no sense if they were trying to eliminate life, Captain Minseo said over the communication system. An invasion force would target populated areas first. So Young walked back to the observation window, staring out at the organized debris field. Her mind was working through possibilities that no one had considered before. Humans had grown up, with automated systems, robotic workers, and machines that continued operating long after their original purpose had been forgotten. What if they are construction machines? She said quietly. What if they were built by some ancient civilization to prepare star systems for colonization, but something happened to their creators and they just kept working? The laboratory fell silent as the three researchers considered this possibility. It would explain the systematic behavior, the careful material processing, and the complete lack of interest in communication. The Devourers were not trying to conquer the galaxy. They were trying to prepare it for inhabitants who would never come. We need to test this theory, Jinho said. If they are construction machines following ancient programming, there might be a way to communicate with them using the right protocols. So Young turned back to her colleagues, her eyes bright with determination. Then we need to figure out how to talk to them, not as enemies or negotiators, but as someone giving instructions to workers who have been waiting a very long time for their next assignment. Captain Minseo's voice crackled through the speakers again. Dr. Kim, whatever you are thinking, remember that we only have one ship and 3 lives to risk on your theory. Sometimes, So Young replied, the biggest risks lead to the most important discoveries. The emergency session of the Galactic Council was unlike anything in recorded history. Representatives from every major civilization had gathered within 12 hours of receiving the human research team's preliminary report. The chamber buzzed with overlapping translations as hundreds of species tried to process information that challenged 3 centuries of accepted knowledge. Ambassador Hyunwoo Park stood at the central podium, holding a data crystal that contained what his team believed was the key to ending the Devourer threat. Around him, delegates voiced their skepticism in every form of communication imaginable. Harmonic frequencies, bioluminescent patterns, electromagnetic pulses, and traditional spoken languages. The humans expect us to believe that the greatest threat our galaxy has ever faced is simply a misunderstanding. The ethereal delegate's crystalline form pulsed with colors that clearly indicated disbelief. 300 years of warfare, and they claim the solution is customer service. High Admiral Kalen's mechanical translator struggled to convey the incredulity in his voice. Your species has been part of this council for less than half a century. How can you claim to understand something that has baffled our greatest minds for generations? Hyunwoo remained calm, though he understood their reaction. The solution his team proposed was so fundamentally simple that it seemed insulting to the sophisticated civilizations that had exhausted every advanced strategy they could imagine. Honored delegates, he began, we ask only that you consider our evidence. Dr. So-Young Kim and her team have spent months studying devourer behavior patterns, and what they discovered changes everything we thought we knew. Dr. So-Young stepped forward, activating a holographic display that showed the systematic way devourers processed star systems. Look at their operational patterns. They do not behave like conquerors or destroyers. They behave like construction crews following a work schedule. The display showed dozens of encounters over the past century, but presented from a completely different perspective. Instead of focusing on the destruction, the human analysis highlighted the organization, the careful sorting of materials, and the methodical progression from system to system. Every construction project begins with site preparation, Dr. Jinho Lee added from his position beside the display controls. Clear away existing structures, sort materials by type, prepare the foundation. That is exactly what we observe in every devourer operation. Counselor Vexhai of the Nebular Confederation drifted closer to examine the data. Her species had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations, and their perspective was valued above all others. You suggest these machines are preparing our galaxy for colonization, but by whom? By creators who are no longer here, So Young replied. We believe the Devourers were constructed by an ancient civilization that disappeared before their terraforming project could be completed. The machines have been continuing their work for millions of years, waiting for instructions that will never come. The chamber erupted in debate. The concept that such sophisticated machines could be operating on outdated programming seemed impossible to species that had evolved beyond such primitive technology failures. Their automated systems were designed with multiple safeguards and adaptive intelligence. But humans had grown up with malfunctioning computers, broken appliances, and automated systems that continued running long after they had outlived their usefulness. They recognized the signs of technology operating beyond its intended parameters. Dr. Tae-Won Nam, the team's communication specialist, projected his analysis of Devourer transmissions. Their internal communications follow patterns consistent with work coordination, not military planning. They share progress reports, resource allocation updates, and completion schedules. This is not the behavior of an invasion force. Even if we accept your theory, said Dr. Zenth from the Syntharch Collective, how do you propose to communicate with machines that have ignored every attempted contact for 3 centuries? Hyunwoo smiled slightly. We do not try to negotiate with them as equals. We communicate with them as their original programmers would have. We give them administrative commands, not diplomatic messages. The silence that followed was profound. The idea was so simple that it seemed either brilliant or completely insane. After centuries of treating the Devourers as sophisticated enemies, the humans proposed treating them as confused software that needed updated instructions. You want to debug them? Asked Prime Counselor Thys, struggling to find words for such an unprecedented concept. Essentially, yes, So Young confirmed. We have reconstructed what we believe are the basic command protocols used by their creators, mathematical languages that predate most modern civilizations. If we can establish communication using their original programming interface, we might be able to update their mission parameters. Admiral Kalen's translator made mechanical sounds that indicated deep skepticism. And if you are wrong, if they respond to your communications by consuming your ship and adding your biological distinctiveness to their operational database, then we will have learned something valuable about their true nature, Hyunwoo replied calmly. But if we are right, we can potentially end this threat without firing a single weapon. The debate continued for hours, but the mathematics of their situation were undeniable. Every military strategy had failed. Every evacuation plan was impossible. Every advanced technology had proven ineffective. They were facing extinction in 57 years with no viable alternatives. Finally, Prime Counselor Thys called for a formal vote. All in favor of authorizing the human proposal to attempt communication with the Devourers using reconstructed command protocols? The vote was not unanimous, but it passed by a significant margin. Faced with certain extinction, the Galactic Council was willing to try humanity's impossible solution. Captain Min Seo Choi had commanded starships for 15 years, but she had never felt as small as she did at this moment. The human vessel New Hope was barely the size of a shuttle, compared to the massive Devourer ships that filled the view screen ahead of them. Each enemy vessel was larger than Earth's moon, their dark hulls bristling with the same weapons that had destroyed entire battle fleets. Distance to the Devourer formation is now 12,000 kilometers and closing, reported Navigator Ji Wuhan from his position at the helm. His voice remained steady, but Min Seo could see the tension in his shoulders. They all knew that no ship had ever approached this close to active Devourers and survived. Behind the captain, Dr. So Young Kim worked frantically at her communications console, making final adjustments to the transmission array her team had built over the past month. Beside her, Dr. Donghyun Park reviewed the reconstructed command languages they hoped would save galactic civilization. Remember, Donghyun said quietly, his fingers dancing over the linguistic analysis programs. We are not trying to negotiate or threaten. We are simply updating a work order that has been running for millions of years. The New Hope carried no weapons and minimal shielding. The Galactic Council had insisted that any attempt at communication must be completely non-threatening. If the human theory was wrong, they would die quickly. If they were right, weapons would only confuse machines that were designed to follow construction protocols. Devourer ships are changing course, Jiwoo announced. They are moving to surround us. Minseo watched the tactical display as dozens of enormous vessels adjusted their positions with mathematical precision. The coordination was perfect, almost beautiful in its efficiency. No communication delays, no hesitation, no wasted movement. It was exactly what someone would expect from advanced construction equipment. "So Young, are you ready?" Minseo asked, her hand hovering over the communication controls. "As ready as we can be," So Young replied, though her voice betrayed her nervousness. "We have reconstructed what we believe are the basic administrative protocols. If these machines are what we think they are, they should respond to proper command syntax." Dr. Taemin Yoon, monitoring the ship's sensors from his station, looked up with wide eyes. "Captain, the Devourers have stopped moving. They are maintaining position around us, but they are not attacking." Minseo felt her heart skip a beat. In 3 centuries of recorded encounters, Devourers had never hesitated to consume any ship that came within range. The fact that they were waiting suggested that something was different about this approach. "Begin transmission," Minseo ordered. So Young activated the communication array, sending out the message her team had crafted using mathematical languages, so ancient that most modern civilizations had no record of them. The transmission was simple, formatted like a basic administrative query rather than a diplomatic communication. Terraforming protocol query. Status report requested. New parameters available for upload. For 17 seconds that felt like hours, nothing happened. The Devourer ships remained motionless, their massive hulls reflecting the light of nearby stars. Then suddenly the New Hope's communication systems came alive with incoming data. "We are receiving a response," Taemin announced, his excitement barely contained. It is massive. They are transmitting in computational languages I have never seen before." The response flooded their systems, not the simple acknowledgement they had hoped for, but a complete status report spanning millions of years of operation. The data was structured in ways that modern translation programs could not parse, but So Young and her team had prepared for this possibility. "The language structure is similar to early human programming protocols," Dong-hyun said, his fingers flying over his analysis console. "It follows logical patterns that we can decode." As the team worked to interpret the Devourer response, a picture began to emerge that confirmed their wildest theories. The machines were indeed construction units, created by a civilization that had vanished eons before the first recorded galactic civilization had emerged. They had been terraforming star systems according to their original programming, waiting for colonists who would never arrive. "They are asking for confirmation of completion parameters," So Young said, her voice filled with amazement. "They want to know if the terraforming specifications have changed and when the colonization phase will begin." Minseo realized they were participating in the most important conversation in galactic history. These machines had been working alone for longer than recorded time, following instructions that had become meaningless ages ago. They were not invaders or destroyers. They were the galaxy's loneliest workers, still trying to complete a job for employers who no longer existed. "Send the completion confirmation," Minseo ordered. "Tell them the terraforming phase is complete and they should enter maintenance mode." So Young crafted the response using the same mathematical protocols. The Devourers understood. It was a simple message that translated roughly to, "Project completion confirmed. Terraforming objectives achieved. Switch to maintenance protocols, await new instructions." The response was immediate and transformative. Across the galaxy, Devourer fleets that had been advancing on populated systems suddenly stopped. The machines that had threatened all life for 3 centuries began shutting down their consumption operations and entering standby mode. "It worked," Taemin whispered in disbelief. "It actually worked." Captain Minseo looked out at the Devourer ships, now dark and silent around them. Humanity had saved the galaxy not through superior firepower or advanced technology, but by doing something no other species had thought to try. They had simply asked the machines what they were doing and told them it was time to stop. The observation deck of the research station New Geneva had never been so peaceful. Dr. So-Young Kim stood at the massive viewport, watching something that no being in the galaxy had witnessed for 3 centuries. Devourer ships working to restore, rather than destroy. Below them, the planet that had once been called Kepler 442c was slowly coming back to life. The same machines that had stripped it bare 6 months ago were now rebuilding its surface with methodical precision. Atmospheric processors hummed quietly as they released carefully balanced gases into the thin air. Massive terraforming engines carved rivers and lakes where only barren rock had existed for decades. Final transmission received from Devourer Central Command, announced Communications Officer Tae-Min Yoon from his station. He still sounded amazed every time he spoke with the machines that had once threatened all life. Message reads, terraforming. Protocol complete. Garden preparation successful. Maintenance mode engaged. Awaiting new cultivation instructions. Dr. Jin-Ho Lee joined So-Young at the viewport, carrying a steaming cup of coffee and a data pad filled with reports from across the galaxy. The transformation is happening everywhere, he said, his voice filled with wonder. The Devourer fleet near the Andromeda border has begun reconstructing the atmosphere on 12 dead worlds. The machines in the Outer Rim are building new ecosystems on planets they consumed decades ago. So-Young smiled as she watched a massive Devourer construct delicately plant what appeared to be the beginnings of a forest on the planet below. The same precision they had once used to dismantle worlds was now being applied to healing them. It is like watching the galaxy's biggest garden project, she said. Captain Mincio entered the observation deck, carrying an official message from the Galactic Council. Her expression was a mixture of pride and exhaustion. The past month had been filled with non-stop coordination efforts as every civilization tried to understand their new reality. The Council has officially declared today Galactic Restoration Day, Mincio announced. Every species is sending delegations to Earth for the largest celebration in recorded history. They want to honor humanity for saving civilization. Ambassador Hyun-Woo Park, who had arrived on the station the previous day, chuckled as he reviewed reports from his diplomatic staff. 23 different species have offered to name star systems after human cities. The Ethereals want to compose a harmonic symphony about our achievement. The Krathen are planning to build monuments in our honor. And the Valorians? So-Young asked, curious about the reaction from the galaxy's most ancient civilization. They have requested permission to study our primitive problem-solving methodologies, Hyun-Woo replied with amusement. Apparently they are fascinated by our ability to think like our ancestors. They want to learn how we maintain such simple approaches to complex problems. Dr. Dong-Hyun Park looked up from his linguistics console, where he had been working on establishing permanent communication protocols with the Devourers. The machines are asking about their next assignment, he reported. They want to know if we have specific terraforming requests, or if they should continue with standard planetary restoration procedures. So-Young turned away from the viewport, her mind already working on the incredible possibilities their success had created. We now have access to the most advanced terraforming technology in galactic history. We can restore dead worlds, create new habitable planets, and expand civilization to regions that were previously impossible to colonize. The implications were staggering. The Devourers possessed technology that was millions of years more advanced than anything the current galactic civilizations had developed. Their ability to manipulate matter at the atomic level, to create stable atmospheres, and to design self-sustaining ecosystems could solve resource problems that had plagued the galaxy for centuries. There is something poetic about it, Jin-Ho observed, watching as the planet below continued its transformation. The greatest threat to galactic civilization has become its greatest asset. The machines that nearly destroyed us are now helping us build a better future. Captain Mincio checked her communication device as another report arrived. The Devourer fleet in the spiral arm has begun converting asteroid fields into building materials for space habitats. They are asking if we want them to construct orbital colonies around suitable stars. Hyun-Woo reviewed the latest diplomatic correspondence from the Galactic Council. Every species wants to participate in the restoration project. The Nebulans are offering to share their knowledge of stellar engineering. The Syntharchs want to contribute their expertise in automated systems. Even the isolated rim worlds are sending representatives. So Young felt a deep sense of satisfaction as she watched the mechanical gardeners continue their work. Humanity had solved the galaxy's greatest crisis not through superior technology or military might, but through something much simpler: the willingness to ask basic questions and think about familiar problems in new ways. "You know what I find most interesting?" she said to her colleagues. "We saved the galaxy by treating the Devourers like what they actually were: confused workers who had been doing the same job for too long without anyone checking on their progress." The observation deck fell quiet as they all contemplated the magnitude of what had been accomplished. 3 centuries of warfare had ended not with a final battle, but with a simple conversation. The galaxy was not only safe but was entering an era of unprecedented expansion and restoration. As the first new forests began to take root on the planet below, So Young smiled at the thought that would define humanity's place in galactic history. Sometimes the most advanced solution was also the most fundamentally human one. The recognition that behind every impossible problem, there was usually someone who had forgotten to update their instructions.